Hello and happy World Salamander Day. It is March 28th, 2026. I am Save the Frogs founder, Dr. Kerry Kriger, and I am coordinator of World Salamander Day. Happy to be here. We have educational presentations happening throughout the day to raise awareness for the salamanders, an incredibly threatened group of amphibians. And I'm very happy to have IUCN Amphibian Specialist Group co-chair Amael Borzee here. Let me get you up here, and I'm going to let you introduce yourself and tell us about your background. Everyone out there, Amael has extensive publications and a lot of knowledge about amphibians and the statistics of amphibian decline, which I'm thinking he's going to tell us about, with a specific focus on the salamanders and newts and what IUCN and ASG does to protect them. So let's get you up here. Why don't you say hi and go ahead and start your screen share and tell us all about amphibians.
Sure. Thank you very much for the introduction. So let me share the screen and I'll explain a bit more about myself and the amphibian species group and conservation. Can you see my screen, and is it in full screen or is it not
I can
showing you the
see
full
it.
screen?
You're good.
Is the full screen or is it just a preview? Because I'm afraid it's projecting on a different screen if
It's
it is
got the
scanned.
preview, or it's got the
All right.
two parts. It looks fine, but if you can get it
Yeah,
full,
let
we're fine.
me
But it's good even so.
let me just, and now should be right. Is it good?
Not let's see. It's at the very bottom right. It's if you go to the very there. Now you're not
And
sharing. There's
and now,
at on PowerPoint. It's a button at the very
yep.
bottom right to make it full screen.
Now it's full screen on my screen. Is it full screen on yours?
Let's see. We have a delay because you're on the other side of the world. There you go. You are full screen. You're good to go.
Perfect.
And
All right.
tell everyone where you're at too.
All right. So thanks very much for organizing Salamander World Day first. That's like something new, and I think that can help with salamander conservation globally. And so I'm very happy to be able to push a tiny bit further towards salamander conservation from what I and ESG can do. So I have two hats. I'm a professor of conservation and animal behavior at Nanjing Forestry University in China, but that's not the position which I'm speaking today, and I'm presenting about the amphibian species group involvement in salamander conservation, and because I'm the co-chair of the ESG, so that's the IUCN SSC amphibian species group, yeah. Bit late here, and so I'm mixing things up a little bit, yeah. A little bit more about myself, you said. So I got interested in amphibian and conservation during my master degree. I'm not one of those very precocious kids who know everything about amphibians before they grow up. I got to know things bit by bit, and the more I got to know about amphibians, the more I like them, and the more I like them, the more I want to keep on seeing them around and doing good in the world, which is something that is a bit difficult. And I guess I can get started with the slide if that's okay with you, or something else specific you want me to speak about. All right, then I'll get going.
Yeah,
Um,
you're
so why am
good to
I?
go.
All right, okay. So why am I saying that seeing them doing good in the wild is not easy? Is so those statistics. So amphibians are more threatened than any other vertebrates on Earth. That's more than 40% of species that are threatened. But then if we break numbers down, if we look, for instance, at salamanders, that's more than 60% of species that are under threat. And here, I mean under threat of extinction, defined as critically endangered, or vulnerable if we follow the IUCN red list categories. Other group of amphibians don't necessarily do much better. And for instance, for caecilians, even though not many species are listed as threatened, we don't know if they're threatened or not for 44% of the species. The reason is that most amphibian species don't really look charismatic, and they are not bright, feathery, or predatory. And so people don't really invest as much in their protection as in other, for instance, eagle, pandas, or tigers. We're here and we're doing what we can for their conservation. And so here, that's how, I mean, a good way to switch into what is the ASG doing. And so the ASG was started as such in 2005 with the mission of providing the scientific foundation to inform effective amphibian conservation action around the world. And here I want to emphasize the fact that the ASG was founded to inform effective conservation, but things are changing bit by bit, and we are doing more and more and growing in that perspective. The ASG is a global network of volunteers, generally from an academic background, but this is changing very much as well. And we have now more than 400 members globally, with some people who are conservationists or people who are doing applied conservation in the field with a different background, but that's the people that really make a difference species by species. At the moment, so we are in charge of providing the information for 9,000 species. It is a lot, and there's not many of us, so that's a lot of work. We have a bit more than 400 members globally. Numbers are growing. There's a lot of momentum at the moment, and we are welcoming anyone interested with a little bit of any type of skills, ability, or interest. At the moment, to be able to work on conservation, we have split the world in 43 regions. That makes sense in terms of applied conservation. What the ASG is generally known for is, so first, the big one that is not written here is the red list. That is used by many people for amphibian or conservation prioritization or actions. And then we have the Amphibian Conservation Action Plan. That's the one on the right of the screen that is guiding conservation. I'll explain a bit more afterwards. And then the State of the World Amphibians, that was based on the second Global Amphibian Assessment, and that I'll present in details afterwards as well. I want to highlight that the ACAP, the Amphibian Conservation Action Plan, is represented by a salamander. And that's something that I'm very proud of, because generally when working on amphibian conservation, we tend to highlight frog species most of the time because they look good, they're a little bit more charismatic. But here having a salamander was something we were really looking, that we worked hard doing. So what does the ASG do? We have many different approaches to work on conservation, and through regional working groups, thematic working groups, the Red List Authority, and task forces. So starting with the regional working groups. So as I said earlier, there's 43 regional, geographical units, 14 regions, 19 countries, nations. Basically, the globe is split in regions that make some type of sense in some form for conservation, but we are working into splitting more finely if we can find people who can take the initiative and help guide the conservation actions. Each region is led by one chair, two co-chairs, deputy chairs, and so on, whatever works for that region, so that we can make sure that amphibian conservation happens. As a result, all the regional groups are very diverse, and each region has a different set of priorities. And for instance, Some very happily work on a lot of salamanders conservation, and others do not, because there is no salamander in, for instance, most of Africa. An example of a regional working group from Bolivia. They do have a few salamanders as well, and their main goal is to provide the scientific basis for updating, to update the IUCN Red List, but also conduct research and monitoring and informing conservation actions. The end goal is to build capacity and expansion and provide education, outreach, and specific initiatives when relevant. The second part of, or the second branch of the ASG is the Amphibian Release Authority. So while it comes within the ASG, is a small core team that is more or less independent, responsible for their own funding and the funding for the actions or the updates they're working on. It is one of the flagship products of the IUCN, so it's something that is quite important. And basically what we do is the cyclical assessment of all amphibians on the red list. It's been coordinated by the Amphibian Release Authority since 2009 and the second global amphibian assessment. And so we are working with more than 1,000 amphibian conservationists from over 100 countries to collate the data that goes into the red list assessment. And it's an example of international collaborations because it goes from people who have the knowledge on those specific species in their own regions. The product that came out of the red listing are the second global amphibian assessment. There was a paper in Nature 2023 that generally well known, and the state of the world's amphibian software that was published in 2023. The software provides a very large amount of information. It's beautifully written, beautifully illustrated, with a lot of graph ideas, little bits of knowledge for all regions globally. And so you have the QR code on the right, on top right, where you can download the file through the ASG website. It's a bit of a heavy file, so it takes a bit of time to load, no worries about it. Something that I want to highlight, so we were speaking about the stats earlier, and something that is interesting here is that when we look at the red list index, which is a measure to explain the trend of extinction risk for species, so the one on the right first, when we look at anurans, which are frogs and toads, we can see that so the red list index is going down, but very slowly. When we look, when we look at the Sicilian, it is going down very slowly. When we look at anurans, which is the frogs and the toads, it's still going down, but you can see that it is somehow not going down as fast between 2006 and 2022 as it was before 1980 and 2006. When we look at Chordata, so the salamanders, you can see there's an acceleration in the way that this red list index is going down, which is here showing that the probability of extinction of salamanders is actually accelerating. If we look at the graph on the left, there we can see that it's based on the type of development, and pink is related to quite a few salamanders that are direct developers, and you can see that the fastest decline on the red list index. Very worrying for salamanders. What the software also developed is the highly threatened genera, and here I want to focus on the salamanders only. So those are the 10 most threatened salamander genera, and as you can see on the screen, the Pseudorhizae, Taurus, Chiropterotriton, Tarototriton, Cynops, Dipina, Broetoclosa, Nototriton, and Paramesotriton. Pretty much all continents where you have salamanders, and 2/3 of all threatened salamanders are actually within those 10 threatened genera, mostly in Mesoamerica, Andes, China, and Japan. But so here, and not speaking about salamander only, what I want to highlight is that of the 556 amphibian genera globally, 65 contain 63% of the threatened species. And what it shows is that actually the threats are not equally distributed across all genera, Some genera are doing much worse than the others. And if we take, for instance, the Pseudorhizia, 97% of the species are threatened in the genera. Very worrying, and that's why I'm very glad you are starting Salamander Day, because we really need to do something for the species. Same, the QR code on the top right, if you want to download the file and be able to see all those numbers in details. So the first and the second global amphibian assessment were done in 2007, 2022. But it took between 8 and 18 years between each of the assessment, which means that by the time it is published, it is already outdated because the IUCN assessment are valid for only 10 years. And so here what we're doing is that we're starting a new process, not a new process, to be able to assess the species on time. And so for the GA3 and GA4, we want to reassess all the species every 5 years if they're threatened, to make sure that all threatened species are updated all the time. And on every odd assessment, we will reassess all the non-threatened species. That way things go faster, the assessment are maintained current, and we have data that is robust to work with. In addition, for species that are newly described, we want to be able to assess them within 2 years of description, so that as soon as they're described, we have a threat category that is assigned to the species. In practice, it's not that easy because there's a lot of amphibian species that are being described, but we are on track, and so far we have managed to work as planned for GA3. And so as a summary, so the first GA was conducted between 2001 and 2004 for 5,743 species. GA2 finished 2022 for 8,011 species. And now we are working on GA3 that we should finish by 2028. And that will be an estimated 9,200 species. I personally think that will be above that estimate, seeing that we have just reached 9,000 species, but let's see. And the GA4 should be conducted between 2029 and 2033 for an estimated 10,000 species, but let's see when we get there. What I want to highlight is that we don't work in isolation. We work with groups in the countries where the assessments are conducted. The assessments are conducted by experts in country. The data is not extracted anymore. Everyone has ownership of their own data and actually taking the initiative in running the assessments. The third branch of the ASG is the thematic working groups. And so we have 12 thematic working groups that are covering threats and approaches to conservation, so species management and informing decision making. So those thematic working groups have got together to write the Conservation Action Plan, the ACAP, that I spoke about earlier, and which was published in 2024. It's basically a roadmap to provide an explanation to conservation needs locally to globally, but also the ways to work on those conservation needs. It's 14 chapters, more than 100 authors altogether, and it is a key document for amphibian conservation. What it does is that it provides guidance on the actions that are the right ones to take for any type of threat to any amphibian species. Also, we aim to, but of course there is a lot more that can be added. It's already a few hundred pages long. It hopefully will cover as much as possible, and we are working on an implemented document, which will be a shortened version of this book that would explain in details to any reader what can we do when we have this type of problem for amphibian conservation. So in the ACAP, and yeah, here again, you can download the file. There's the QR code for the PDF. Same, it's a few hundred pages long, so be patient if it doesn't come through directly. So what it explains first are the main threats, and we have one chapter for each of the threats. For instance, habitat loss, climate change, infectious diseases, threat consumption, noting that there are many other threats, for instance, chemical contamination, invasive species, and so on. We don't have enough experts to cover everything about all the subject, and so there is a need to add some additional chapters in the future when there's enough energy to work on that. The other chapters are about conservation and the tools that can be used for conservation. And so, for instance, for species management, we have a chapter on conservation breeding, one on assisted reproduction and biobanking, one on genomics, one on translocation, but also on informed decision making. And so, for instance, we have chapters on communication and education, one on conservation planning, and the last one on surveys and monitoring. The fourth branch of the ASG, that is, this one is related to conservation actions more than the others, the task forces. And we have more and more interest in task forces. The first one that was created was in, I'm going to say 2019, but I might be wrong by a few years, is the Atelopus Task Force. The first action was to publish the Harlequin Toad Conservation Action Plan, the ACAP. And so the Atelopus Task Force is advised by the Atelopus Survival Initiative, and the Atelopus Task Force is facilitating the implementation of the ACAP while supporting the ESG priorities. But basically, it's a very large network of people all across the range of the Atelopus toads, and that is working towards conservation of 2 species. We have other task forces, some that are still in development, and for instance, there's the Atelopus task force I spoke about, and there's the Melanophrenisca task force, and we're working on starting a Sicilian task force, and invasive toad task force, a Patagonian task force, and we have some others that don't come up to the tip of my tongue right now, but everything is available on the ESG website, and the QR code here on the top right can provide you more information. And of course, feel free to dropping me an email, WhatsApp, or whatever at any time, no problem at all. The other task force I want to speak about is the Eastern Asian Salamander Task Force. And this one was launched in May 2024. Still developing because we have reached about 100 people that are interested in joining from Eastern Asia in general, but also from other countries where people have interest in Eastern Asian salamanders. Is focused first on understanding and remediating the threats to the species, with a little bit more broadening of the subject when time allows and energy is there. And so what the goal of the task force is to provide conservation guidelines and support conservation funding applications if there is any interest in doing so. We are developing a lot of cross-boundary collaborations so that people who are not necessarily used to work together can come together and see what is working for the conservation of other nation salamanders and what can be learned from, can be implemented, can be copied, or can just be avoided because we know that it does not work, and better not to repeat what we know not to be working. One of the first output of the task force was a horizon scan of the threats. And one of the problems for the Eastern Asian salamander was that there was not enough data to provide assessment for the IUCN red list. And you can see here on this graph that made by Abhyasis Srivastava, that until now there were only 481 threats recorded for Eastern Asian salamanders. After running the horizon scan, where we're basically asking people about threats to the Eastern Asian salamander and how they've been recorded, we found 839 threats recorded for those 100-something, I forgot, 112 species maybe. Please don't quote me on that number because I'm sure it's wrong, but it's in that range of species.
Amael,
yes,
sorry to jump in.
Yep.
We've got 4 total minutes, so I think you should end in 1 minute, and then we'll have a few minutes for questions.
Good. All right, no problem, can do that. And so that was more than 80 people in 80 nations, and so we got a lot of new data that was not available before. And so here, for instance, those are the threats that have been listed for all of the species. And you can see that there's a lot more through the recent scan than through the IUCN Red List. The one thing is very important here is the one for climate change and severe weather, because this one was almost not listed through the IUCN Red List. And so that's something that is really important in terms of climate change at the moment, and that needs to be remediated. But what has changed? What are we doing? Are we making a difference for amphibian conservation? And the answer is yes. Even though funding is a problem, and especially for some group like cecilians, compared to all other group of animals, we are still doing quite a bit. And so here, I just want to show you where are the threatened species. And you can see there's a lot of them in pretty much every area of the world, especially equatorial regions. But then here, that's something that is giving us a little bit of hope. And so you can see that there are two graphs. The first one is from 1980 to 2004, and then 2004 to 2022. And you can see that for the lines that go from red to green, that's when a species got to do better. And so if we look at the first part, the one on the left, we had 400 that's something that makes interested, please get in touch. And I want to say thank you to everyone who is part of the ESG and spending a lot of time, because we are all volunteers and all working for free for amphibian conservation. Thank you very much. And if there's time for questions, I'm happy to take any.
All right, a huge thank you to Amael Borzee, IUCN Amphibian Specialist Group. I wish we had more time for questions. We've only got 1 minute. I do have a question. Can you hear me all right?
No problem.
Okay. Yeah, we only have 1 minute, so we're going to cut out. Actually, it's probably time right now. So just maybe you can give me a 15-second answer. There's tons of data. It comes in. Is it in any kind of publicly accessible database, or are there any plans to offer the data in there to people out there, or any kind of API or anything?
The data is freely downloadable from the IUCN website. I'm happy to share a link later on and or guide people towards our website where everything is available for free, because we want to make like the goal is amphibian conservation. So anyone who wants data, it is free downloadable as early as we have it. It is online.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much. Let's see. Hey, everyone out there, thanks for being here. The talks continue, but on a different link. In the chat, I put in a bunch of links right there. Right now, we've got an hour and 15 minutes of Himalayan salamander presentations coming up, but you need to click that South Asia Meetups link, register there if you haven't already, to get the Zoom login for that. For all the other talks happening today, it's going to be the same link. But for what's about to happen with Himalayan salamanders, you need to get that other link. Any questions, contact at worldsalamanderday.org or contact at SaveTheFrogs.com. Thanks, everyone, for being here. Thank you, Amael. Best of luck with your salamander work and work in Nanjing. And everybody out there, thanks for helping save the salamanders. Happy World Salamander Day. See you soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.